Hello, my name is David Brett. I'm the editor of the New Westminster Times, coming to you today from the Parker Hotel, where earlier leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the official opposition, held a press conference primarily to address the thorny issue of private property rights, particularly in BC, in light of the Cowichan decision, which has caused uncertainty around private property rights and fee simple interest. The presser and other events in BC by Poilievre come hard on the heels of a May 25th, 2026 opposition motion that was tabled by the Conservatives calling on the government to prioritize private property fee simple interests, in particular by canceling the litigation directive that is seen by many to handcuff federal lawyers in court, where they are not able to argue that the grant of fee simple title should trump Aboriginal title. So that was voted down by the federal Liberals, the NDP, and the Bloc, with all of the Conservative Party members voting in favor. So Carney, Poilievre was here, faced questions from reporters after his remarks about many of his usual talking points about crime and safety and dealing and increasing jobs. So the New Westminster Times had an opportunity to put a question to Poilievre, specifically relating to the mining industry in BC and indirectly across Canada, where the federal government, through advertisement, fairly slick federal government advertising campaigns touting critical minerals and other massive mining projects as being quote-unquote fast-tracked, supposedly to show the federal government's commitment to resource extraction in the country. However, as we put the question to Poilievre, the BC government is effectively handed a veto over all of these projects to First Nations because of UNDRIP, and frankly, a willingness and a seeming desire to have this veto in place, UNDRIP or not.
First of all, no one should have a veto. That is clear. Even the Supreme Court has ruled that no one has a veto. They have a right to be consulted, but not a right to block projects. So both the Liberals and in Ottawa and the NDP in British Columbia have violated the constitutional principle that no one has a veto by adopting UNDRIP and DRIPA, which require free, prior, and informed consent. That is a recipe for logjamming basically every project in this country. So it's time for both the federal Liberals and the provincial NDP to get out of the way so that we can get building. Mark Carney's ads are all an illusion. While he claims that he no longer wants to block projects, there are 500 projects waiting for federal approval on Mark Carney's desk. 500. So the next time there's a great photo op that they've approved one project that's been already waiting for 7 years, remember, there's 499 others that are waiting. What we need to do is scrap all the anti-development laws so that automatically and organically these projects can go ahead without waiting for political interference and bureaucratic red tape to happen. The reason why we are the only country in the G7 in a recession is because Mark Carney has kept in place every anti-development law and every industrial tax that Trudeau imposed. And until you scrap those laws, C-69, the West Coast shipping ban, the industrial carbon tax, we will not truly unlock the hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth we need for paychecks, for affordable food, and for our schools and hospitals.
So is it really about UNDRIP, or is it about the orientation of the BC NDP and indirectly the federal Liberals to basically negotiate away the leverage that the government and the people of Canada have to develop these projects? So in response, Poilievre said there should be no veto over any project in Canada. He said it was unconstitutional. It ran contrary to the Constitution that anyone should have a veto over any project. So it's clear that Poilievre, who was flanked by MP Aaron Gunn and other members of his caucus, that they're on a collision course with the BC NDP and the federal Liberals. So there's pressure being brought to bear by the Conservatives on the Carney government to kind of stop pulling its punches when it comes to handing rights and title not only to fee simple interest, private property, but also mineral titles. The question arises, who owns the mineral titles? Does the Crown own the titles? Who's also this concept of co-governance, which he didn't directly address, but he did call also for the repudiation of the recent Comox Treaty, and he called for a repeal or repudiation of the agreement with the Musqueam that was announced earlier this year. So he's calling on the federal government to oppose these treaties because they don't enshrine private property interests. So he's on a campaign here in BC to keep the federal government's feet to the fire and to also indirectly bring pressure on the David Eby NDP government to back down on its seeming intransigent, intractable position that is never going to repeal or even revise DRIPA in any way, shape, or form. His visit comes on the heels of the historic Conservative Party of British Columbia race where a staunch federal conservative, Carolyn Findlay, was elected leader of the Conservative Party of BC. So a major theme in that leadership race was this problem, growing problem, elephant in the room, if you will, of the need to develop resource projects in British Columbia, this promise to do it by government, but at the same time tying the hands, shooting oneself in the foot by handing a de facto veto over everything to First Nations, many of which it's unclear who's in charge of the First Nations, how they're elected, what their governance is. So we seem to be heading into an impossible situation. What can Poilievre do? He is making sure he's keeping the issue alive and bringing public attention to the issue. So it remains to politicians in BC to put pressure on the NDP government to repeal, retract, amend, or do something with DRIPA to stop this logjam. Poilievre used this expression, logjam.
So both the Liberals and in Ottawa and the NDP in British Columbia have violated the constitutional principle that no one has a veto by adopting UNDRIP and DRIPA, which require free, prior, and informed consent. That is a recipe for log jamming basically every project in this country.
Thanks very much for watching.